Welcome to the Deck Brewers Cauldron, the series where we talk about some of our favorite Magic the Gathering decks and the cards and combos that make them tick. I'm Jonathan, and today I'm going to talk about a relatively new deck of mine that replaced two of my older decks, both of which I've talked about before, in the same episode. Of course, I'm referring to Sir Gwyn, Hero of Ashvale, and Gallia, Kindler of Hope, both of which were Knight Kindred decks. Go watch that video. So what's my new deck? Oh, it's the title of the video, of course. Arna Kennerüd, Skycaptain. Let's go! Arna Kennerüd Skycaptain costs 2 generic, a white, a blue, and a black, for a 4/4 human knight with flying, lifelink, and ward. She also has a triggered ability. Whenever a modified creature you control attacks, double the number of each kind of counter on it. Then, for each non-token permanent attached to it, create a token that's a copy of that permanent attached to that creature. As a quick reminder, modified means a creature that has counters is equipped or is enchanted. As you can see, this can use all of the best elements of both my old equipment deck and my old auras deck, and still have a Knight Kindred subtheme. I've seen some pretty spicy builds for Arna, but I really wanted to keep those original themes. What might be even more powerful than making token copies of good equipment and good auras, though, is that counter ability. I've learned from playing Hydras, go watch my Zaxara video, that doubling counters can get out of control very quickly. And to that end, I've kept everything that made counters in those old decks and added a bunch more besides. Knights include some of our old friends, Ayara's Oathsworn, Exsanguinator Cavalry, and Vodalian Wave Knight, and they're joined by Bosri's Lieutenant, Elenda the Dusk Rose, Knight of the Ebon Legion, Oathsworn Knight, Parhelion Patrol, and Sheriff of Safe Passage. While equipment includes Armory of Aroas, Greatsword of Tyr, Sword of Hours, Ring of Avos Isle, Ring of Thune, Ring of Azathrid, and my favorite, Invasion of New Capenna. The Holy Frazzle Cannon. The other consideration that I made in this build is in regards to the second part of Arna's ability, copying auras and equipment. While some pieces stack up on themselves nicely, many can be more effective if they're spread around, especially as new creatures enter the battlefield. Ultimately, this means that I ended up with twice as much equipment as auras in this deck, since they can simply be re-equipped. However, I also included Arden Intrepid Archaeologist and Halvar God of Battle to help shift stuff around. Oh, and speaking of shifting stuff around, there's also a Nesting Grounds in here to help get the counters started. Of course, this deck includes white, just like those other two did, so you might think that I kept all of those Knight Kindred staples, like Knight Exemplar, Kinsbale Cavalier, and Valiant Knight. But actually, I didn't, because they don't modify my creatures. Though I did keep Knight Exemplar. Making my whole board indestructible for 3 mana is just too good in a deck that wants to get the most out of Arna's attack trigger. Oh, and I kept Herald of Hoofbeats and Pure Steel Paladin too. Overall, this deck runs a bit less removal than Sir Gwyn did, though more than Gallia did, and it also has room for counterspells, haha! It runs a similar amount of recovery, but also more board protection. And beyond that, it runs all of the best card draw and tutors that were in both decks combined, plus some. Ultimately, this deck has a lot more interaction than either of its predecessors did, and it tends to play out smoother and faster. As I mentioned before, your like or comment lets us know that you're enjoying these videos and would like to see more. And of course, I'd love to know if I missed anything you think I should have packed into this deck. Or perhaps you just have a favorite story you'd like to share about our friend Arna.